here. Part one, let's call it, of the Fun Deck series for Legends of the Force. Not quite what we would call as meta adjacent as the Luke Skywalker was in last set, but let's go ahead and start off with Kit Fisto. So, really, Kit Fisto, the 1/6. Yeah, let's talk about what he can do. First off, we're going to look at the leader. We'll look a little bit at the philosophy behind this deck. We'll go key cards by Aggression, Command, Vigilance, and Cunning. Take a look at some play lines and then deck ideas. So that's what you got coming. If you have not already, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a ton with growth. I appreciate people being here, talking about decks, talking about cards, and yeah, let's get into it. All right, Kit Fisto. Here we have an Aggression Heroism leader. We are 5 deploy, Jedi, Force, and Republic, and a leader ability that if you attacked with a Jedi this phase, exhaust, pay 1 resource, deal 2 damage to a unit. This is Daring Raid without having the card in your hand. The only thing it can't do is attack bases, but being able to ping down something that you have not had to attack into is an exceptionally powerful ability. Makes this guy really strong on the leader side. The amount of Jedi that we have in this set makes this a really interesting leader. A 5 deploy makes him really good for sealed player draft, and those formats are going to be coming into their own for competitive play. And so it's good to understand what's happening if this guy hits you in pack. On your unit side, you are a 1/6 Saboteur that gains +1/+0 for each other friendly Jedi unit. He is definitely a Jedi build-around with a built-in Daring Raid. So, our philosophy here. With or without the Force token, we're going to show everything with right now just because, if we're using something that is going to be in draft play, we need to be looking at those draftable bases. With or without the Force token, attacking with a Jedi gives us Daring Raid without the card. This enables a go-wide strategy. This rewards that go-wide strategy with a big flip for our leader. Kit's value on the board is that he can bypass Sentinels, or if he's big enough, he can just delete shielded units. He's a Saboteur, so he can take out their shields, and then he can take down the unit depending on how big he is. Cheap upgrades in this deck, and those cheap upgrades play with your Force units and can make them into really high value. You can augment a lot of these play lines with Force payoffs. There are 2 very strong ones, probably the 2 strongest interactions in playing units as far as Jedi go, or as far as the Force units go, are already in Kit Fisto's aspect. There is always the option to play the leader unit ability rather than trading down on what we are playing that turn in order to use that thing. Don't trade that action away for potential damage. So don't be trapped into the idea that you are going to have to play Kit Fisto's leader ability on every single turn that it's available when it bypasses the potential to get damage into a base. So what do we have? In Aggression, there are a total of 15 Jedi units in Aggression. This is spanning from set 1 to now. And when we're looking at this, we're always going to look at it for single aspect. So there are some instances where we have double aspect. They're pretty rare, but when they occur, we're not going to bother including them just because that's not going to be a thing that we can play. 15 Jedi units in total. The core units here, Coyote Mundi, especially with Force. Kit Fisto's Aether Sprite is a big fighter out in space and can strip away a lot of upgrades. Anakin's Interceptor is not from this set specifically, but is a Jedi unit that we can play at 2. Adigalia is able to be played and tax your opponent for using events. And then Mace Windu is probably the best of the definitely the best of the uncommons in the set. Probably one of the best cards in this set. And the ability to use a force token and deal damage to a unit and stick around with a 6/6 body just can't be ignored. Alternate units are Ray and Quinlan Voss, and then the upgrade that we have here is the Knight Saber. Um, Very good because everything that we're going to play is Jedi. So going +3/+2 on any Jedi that you put out there for 2, we have play lines that we'll talk about later. Command cards, uh, 12 possible. Double command, Latitude not included. Core units here are Gunji, Obi-Wan, and Kelleran Beck, with optional units being things like Yoda and Eve Koth. I have also included in here Huyang. Uh, he is a massive play for this because when he comes in, we can choose another Jedi unit or another friendly unit and make it +2/+2. That is a permanent effect. Um, you can do this. He is a Jedi, even though he is a droid. He can hold all of your lightsabers. He is able to make a pretty big body out of things. He attacks. He still turns on Kit Fisto's ability, although he does not gain you a force token. Um, Vigilance. The reason you're playing Vigilance, if you're playing Vigilance, is Luke Skywalker. Let's not beat around the bush on that one. However, we also have Yaddle. We have the Jedi Starfighter. We have Kanan Jarrus here, Anakin and Luke, with optional units including things like Ezra Bridger and Barriss Offee to fill the early parts of our curve. Yoda also does that. The Coyote Mundi blue non-heroism can do that and start to give yourself some card draw. The upgrade here, the Jedi lightsaber, is very strong as it allows all of your units to attack and give -2/-2 to a defender. Um, Finally, Cunning. There are 9 Jedi units in total, and here you are playing Ambush. Youngling Padawan and Vernestra Rowe do not have Ambush, but just about everything else that you're going to play in does. Deba Bulba, Qui-Gon Jinn, Plo Koon all work off of Ambush. Plo Koon is useful in here because you need to have basically one unit on the board. You can flip Kit Fisto, get yourself a second unit, bring Coordinate online. When you play Plo Koon in, it doesn't work quite as well as you got it in Quinlan Voss because you don't get to ping the extra damage. But doing that can make him an ambush for 6. Uh, Very strong play still. And then Qui-Gon being able to, when defeated, move another ground unit or remove another non-leader ground unit and put it on the top or bottom of an opponent's deck or your own. Allows for some play lines where he is a very powerful 2-for-1 at least. So, play lines. Your turn 1 play line in all versions of this deck is to stick a turn 1 Jedi unit. Turns 2 and 3, you want to attack with that Jedi. Now, depending on what you've got in your hand and how your play line wants to develop, attacking with that Jedi early opens you up to be able to start taking advantage of the diversity of this deck. You can play a 2-drop and play Kit Fisto's ability. You can play a 3-drop. You can play an upgrade, depending on what your opponents are probably playing against you. Here's the thing. In all versions of this, one of the strengths of the Kit Fisto deck is that your opponents, in order to limit Kit Fisto's power, need to attack into your units. There really isn't a time other than attacking into Sentinels where you should really be that worried about trading units. It's on them to do, because if not, your Kit Fisto comes out as a giant, and you're going to just overwhelm them with a wide board, a big Kit Fisto, and a huge flip turn. Especially as you're able to soften up some of their units and defeat them without ever having to attack them. Kit Fisto's ability twice gets rid of most things, especially in the early game where you are prior to that leader flip. On that flip turn, you can often play a card and leave some resources open for something like a Night Saber, uh, or threaten the Night Saber with the ability to play another Jedi down and add more power to Kit Fisto. And we can also always delay flipping Fisto until we have a better board state. If my opponents are starting to use that turn to try and knock off some of our Jedi, we can still attack base, still build our board, still use our leader ability, and reset a little bit to our bigger units. Putting down things like Mace Windu to eliminate something that we've already done damage to, and rebuild a board from there that Kit flips into with a little nicer board state. Let's talk about some decks. I've arranged these kind of in the way that I like them. They're all done with the force bases, as we said, and I'll talk about them each a little bit as we go. Because Force Throw is in your color, it is in every single one of these because you are going to be loaded down with Force units. In the green, what I have chosen is to put myself in a package where my top end is Yoda, and I have a lot of ways to use the Force to trigger his ability, but I also have a lot of payoffs for using the Force through either deployments or ramping or base healing. So I've got a lot of different ways that this thing pays off. Um, our 2-drop suite here is quite large. We've got 15 turn 1 plays, and that is by design because we are often going to be playing a turn 1 play followed by a turn 1 play on turn 2 and using Kit Fisto's ability. We might see that happen even on a third turn if our Jedi Consular is one of the things that gets the board, because if we can get a Force token, we can really start to put a lot of pressure on people, because now we have the ability at any time to play one of our larger units at discount, play one of our still attack with one of our units that's on the board, generate another Force token for down the line, play out a large unit or a larger unit, sometimes even an above value one, and still have room for Kit Fisto's ability. Huyang in here is quite valuable. I have run the play line multiple times of playing Obi-Wan on a turn and then Huyang down to bolster Obi-Wan. Because he is a Jedi, you now have a 5/7 Sentinel, and that's a 5/7 conditional Sentinel for just about every turn that you're going to play. And you can make Obi-Wan a real menace to try and defeat, because they can't get to Huyang around by attacking him unless they claim initiative and go first, which allows you the freedom to do what you want for the rest of that turn. So quite often, if that's the case, you're able to play down another unit or play down a lightsaber or something similar, and then line up a Kit Fisto ping because somebody has had to grab initiative early to try and deal with Huyang in order to deal with Obi-Wan. This keeps card advantage with Coyote Mundi, and it allows you to push some units off the board with Mace Windu. But the real hammer here is that if you even get to a late game, which I often do not, Yoda's ability really can close things out because you are able to spread that board relatively wide and just ping away with Yoda as a large ability. As you can see here, the sideboard includes, again, mostly Jedi, including the Paladin Cruiser, which is a fun one to slap down and put experience tokens on everything, including Kit Fisto. Keller and Beck can provide a lot of value here, especially if it is done in a way that you are able to cheat him in. Blue. In blue, we are looking at units like Yaddle coming in and the Heirloom Lightsaber. I have this deck working to power up Anakin, and so one of my 5-cost potential plays is Power of the Dark Side, to be able to remove a unit. This goes well in conjunction with some of your other attacks and the fact that opponents are going to have to attack into you, and makes it where you're able often to pick off one of the only units, but also empowers that Anakin deploy to go -3/-3. Luke Skywalker is the reason you play this deck. Anakin, turning him into something that has that same power really makes this a menace when you can do that on consecutive turns. Um, yeah. Yellow. Uh, the key to playing yellow is that you're going to wind up moving from a early force deck into a ambush deck as the game moves on. Um, and you do that through the use of things like Plo Koon, uh, Depa, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon Jinn, um, and really are able to kind of push through. I've added Sheehan Flurry to this so that you could also come back and play one of your force units that does not already have ambush and gain that ability to kind of soak up some extra damage. Um, it is especially mean when you do that with some of your more mid-game units that allow you to be able to stick a Coyote Mundi on the table without him taking back all four, and they have to attack into it. So this deck works pretty well. You're still able to get off some of your other events and effects that are unique to Cunning. So Surprise Strike and Waylay are in here to be able to kind of push back on your opponent's units. From your sideboard, you have Impossible Escape, and being able to use that force token, utilize that force token to tap down some of your opponent's units. So I think that this is probably number 3 on my ways of playing this, but there's the yellow one. This is easily number 4, which is to play him double aggression. Again, we're following kind of similar play lines, except we're now more limited because we are missing the other starting cards here. So suddenly we've gone from having a very wide array of ground units available to us as we had in green and blue, and now we have just Adigalia that is a playable force Jedi turn 1 play. She's a good one, but she's really our only option here. With the rest of them being space units, now those space units are kind of able to be bolstered by what we've got on the board, but not necessarily the best version of this. What we do have is some resilience here in being able to play things like bold resistance or aggression or bravado to reactivate some of these Jedi, turn them back on, and push attacks and damage. It is not as efficient in the early game, and so probably not the best version of it. I have been playing the green one, so I've been playing this guy right here with a pretty good measure of success. It's a fun deck to play. It's a good deck to play, but just because if you are winding up playing in the competitive scene and are seeing how sealed and draft work, this is a very good leader to build around. Not the very best that's in this set, but this is a very strong leader to build around due to the volume of Jedi that we have. So that's all I've got for you for this time. We will see you around with some more of the fun decks and meta experience as we have more of them available for you. Until then, take care.